Welcome to the best of first-person episodes from Phantoms and Monsters. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of all future uploads.
8 to 9 foot black Sasquatch observed near Beaver Bend State Park, Oklahoma. A friend and I both saw what we believe to be a Sasquatch on May 14, 2016. It wasn't inside the Beaver Bend State Park, but was on a trail that was in the surrounding Ouachita National Forest in eastern Oklahoma. As we were hiking, we heard a strange noise. It was a very loud call that sounded like it was from something big. The voice seemed almost hoarse-sounding. As it called, I noticed a glimpse of something black slip out of view behind some trees growing along the creek bed between us. A second later, the black form came out from the other side of the trees and appeared to be strafing to its right. It stopped for a second, and I could faintly see the glistening of its eyes contrasting its entirely matted black figure. It only stopped for a short moment before vanishing from view again behind more trees. At that point, I was really confused what I was seeing, and we were trying to judge what could have made the sound. After what was probably only 15 seconds, my friend exclaims that he could see it. It was obstructed from my view until the last few moments when it appeared out from behind the trees that were blocking my view. It looked like an 8 or 9 foot person who was totally covered in black. It was running up a considerably steep ridge at incredible speeds. The oddest part is that it almost appeared to be gliding up the steep incline. It was moving incredibly fast, but it was perfectly smooth, almost like being on a conveyor belt. Each stride it took with its legs allowed it to cover a seemingly impossible amount of distance. It seriously almost looked like some crouching tiger, hidden dragon nonsense. At first we tried to brush it off as just an incredibly fit jogger. We expected the trail to lead up the way where we saw the humanoid form, but once we realized the trail led in a completely different direction, it became hard to rationalize that we saw a human moving that gracefully through brush at such high speed. I haven't told many people because I don't expect them to believe me. I wouldn't believe me if I hadn't been there. I was always skeptical of Sasquatch existing. I never thought a species of large apes could possibly evade capture for so long in a country as densely populated as America. The whole experience has only left me with more questions than answers. Why haven't we found bones yet? Even if they bury their dead, we'd have eventually unearthed something accidentally at some point. There's lots of points to be made about how seemingly unlikely their existence is, and yet, this stuff happens. Life is weird. DB.
Bigfoot vanishes. Later, a flash of light. I saw something about 3 months ago. It all lasted no more than 5 seconds, but it is etched into my memory. Uneventful but very real and spectacular. I've told nobody yet. I never felt like I should bring it up, and it was meant just for me. It was August 2018 at 6:10 a.m. in upstate New York in the Adirondacks area. I often left bread, nuts, fruit and vegetable scraps thrown in the yard. I enjoyed watching the birds, squirrels, chipmunks, rabbits, deer, fox, raven and crows eat the food I fed them. I could sit out there with my morning coffee. The critters did not mind me being there. I would talk and pretend I was conversing with them. This went on for months. I would sit here in the yard as the sun would go down. Another animal feeding time. Sometimes I would go out late, and very late for a smoke. Again I would walk around in silence listening and enjoying nature. A remote and wooded area. The woods if you will. Sounds like I'm rambling, but I'm setting the scene and my pattern of behavior. Not uncommon for me to be here day or night. So, one morning I go out the back door for coffee and a smoke. I'm standing at the back door breathing in the fresh morning air and take a sip of coffee. Nothing is out of normal. Birds chirping and critters moving about. Then I hear a snort like a deer would do. I look exactly where it came from. Maybe 100 or less feet away. The woods have the morning light shining on the line of trees, but beyond that was still mostly dark. I could see about 20 feet into the tree line. I don't see a deer. Within 2 seconds of the first snort I hear another one as I am still looking, but not seeing a deer. Something steps out from behind a tree. Its left side is facing me. All I could see was a large black shape step out. It stands there for maybe a few seconds. I know what I was looking at, but I had no reaction other than just watching. It made a noise, but not the snorting kind. Then it walked into the woods. Not only did I see and hear it walk away, but I felt it in the ground. Like it was hollow and vibrated. No breaking or snapping branches, just footsteps. Almost like an echo in the ground. After about 6 steps it was gone. Nothing changed. Same birds and critters moving about. Unaffected. I stood there processing what had just happened over the last few seconds. Other than the echoing thuds of footsteps, it was silent. When I realized that, I walked forward slowly to the spot. Not sure what I would see. Nothing. Where it was standing, the ground was covered with fallen and old branches. You, nor I or a ninja could have walked through here silently. I judged the height an easy 8 feet tall. Based on its head height relative to the tree it stood next to. I stood there looking around with no sounds. I walked back to the picnic table and sat on it. Still everything is as normal. After the coffee and smoke, and observing the wildlife, I go and head inside. As I reach for the doorknob I feel like I should turn around. So I do, and scan the tree line again. Nothing. Just as I turn the knob, while facing the door I see a flash of light like a camera flash. Like someone behind me just took a picture. Instantly I got goosebumps. My hairs stood right up and felt like I couldn't get inside quick enough. Strange but uneventful and very memorable. It had to have watched me for at least 10 seconds before it moved. Haven't seen it since. It wanted me to know it was there. This thing was massive. John W.
Bigfoot observed while fishing at Lake Barkley, Kentucky. I currently live in southern Illinois with my husband. I grew up in rural Lyon County, Kentucky, and at home in the woods and around the water. My dad and I spent many weekends fishing. One early April 2001 morning, when I was 14, we pulled a boat out of the slip and headed south into Lake Barkley. It was an extremely overcast day with a heavy fog. In fact, we almost canceled that day. About an hour after we moved into the river, the sun broke through the clouds, and the fog started to lift, so Dad said he wanted to try out the brush piles in one of the shallow bays off the land between the lakes area. Dad pulled into one of the bays and dropped anchor. We then started fishing off the brush piles. I can remember that we were landing crappies and were having a very good morning. After an hour things slowed down, so we decided to have some lunch. We sat in the boat eating about 100 feet from shore. I think it was close to noon, but I'm not positive. We had finished eating and Dad started to pull the anchor when we heard a loud splash. We looked towards the brush pile, and, again, there was a large and loud splash. Dad thought someone was throwing rocks, so he said that we needed to find another location. We started to pull off towards the main lake, when I happened to catch a look at a man walking along the shore after it walked from behind the brush pile. Then I noticed that this was not a man because it had hair over its entire body. It was a Bigfoot. I yelled at Dad and he looked as I pointed towards it. He cut the motor off and we sat there watching the Bigfoot throw rocks into the water. It looked like it was trying to hit something. We watched for several minutes as the Bigfoot moved in and out of the brush on shore. Dad wanted to get closer so he could take a picture on his phone, but I was scared and begged him to leave. The water was shallow and I was afraid it would get mad and attack us. He tried to get a photo, but for some reason the phone wasn't working correctly. We then noticed that there was a smaller boat heading towards us. There was a man on the motor. As he came near, he cut the motor and looked towards the Bigfoot. He definitely saw it because he looked back at us with a surprised look on his face. Dad was alarmed and said that we're leaving. By this time, he was upset that someone else had seen us observing the Bigfoot. He recognized the man in the boat. My dad was well known in the area, and he was worried what would happen if his name was associated with a Bigfoot sighting. When we got home that evening, we told Mom what we saw. She was upset as well. That's as far as the story went. I was told to never tell anyone what we had seen because it would create problems. I told the story to my husband not long after we were married. His reaction was favorable, and he has showed interest in what we saw. I guess we can refer to ourselves as Bigfoot enthusiasts. That's my story. I wish to remain anonymous, mostly because of my parents' fears of ridicule. Thanks for reading. Yee.
Bigfoot encounters in the American Heartland, Kansas. When I was in high school, my uncle and I would hunt deer and turkey in eastern Kansas. In 1999, we were near the Mary State Seekers Refuge bow hunting for deer in a swampy woodland area. We had been in the same location before and familiar with the layout. Both of us had portable tree stands overlooking the bottomland. We had been in our stands for about an hour. It was early morning, but I don't remember the time. My uncle was to the right of me about 50 yards, so we could both see anything moving below. I heard splashing from his direction and noticed him waving at me. The splashing was getting louder. I first thought it may be a small herd of deer moving my way. As I looked through the thickets, I noticed something tall and bulky standing beside a tree. I then saw something similar a few feet away from the other figure. I looked over at my uncle. He was crouched down and still. The two figures started to move towards me. Then one worked its way into a clearing, and I was able to get a good look. It was definitely a Bigfoot, and it was huge. It was around 8 feet tall and covered head to toe in matted muddy dark hair. It was reaching into the water and putting whatever it found in its mouth. I didn't see the other Bigfoot. It must have moved off in the other direction. I was as still as possible, though I was shaking. This Bigfoot was no more than 100 feet from me, though I was 12 foot in the tree. I must have watched it for 10 minutes or so as it waded through the water eating whatever it pulled out. It eventually walked away from us towards the woods on the opposite rise. My uncle and I looked at each other, but didn't make a sound. I was ready to get out of there, but he remained in his stand holding his hand palm out to let me know to hang on. I wasn't even thinking about hunting deer any further that day. About 15 to 20 minutes had gone by. My uncle started moving off his stand. I did the same, dropping the ladder and climbing down. We walked towards each other and agreed to come back for the stands later. In fact, I didn't go back. That afternoon, my dad and grandfather went back with my uncle to look around and retrieve the stands. Both of them believed we saw the Bigfoot. My grandfather said he believes they were eating freshwater mussels and snails. I never went back to that area, though I still hunt. That was the only time I have ever seen anything like that. I'd be interested to know of other witness sightings in eastern Kansas and western Missouri. I've heard many stories, but nothing recent. Chad.
This is Lon Strickler. If you like this program, it would help us if you would give it a thumbs up. Then subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when we upload new first-person encounters. We have many more to come very soon. And by the way, if you have a suggestion or an experience of your own, please leave a comment.